is going to look after the video, because I've got some friends who would love to come and owing to sickness and all, and even I think I'll send this to my brother George and perhaps the family, okay? So we thank Jim and Elmer for coming and taking time to come and share his wonderful journey. Okay, thank you.
Is it going to be on there, or is it going to be?
No, it's just being recorded, that's all.
Thank you.
It's just being recorded.
Oh.
Okay, we up and running, Rob?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. That sounds like a school teacher, doesn't it? Really? Good morning, class. Okay, so I'm Jim Kilpatrick. This is my wife, Elma. And I guess the reason I'm here speaking to you at the moment is because Roberta volunteered me to do this. And I guess it's a little bit about how I got here, why I'm here, and the journey that has brought me here. I took early retirement. I'm 63, coming 64 years of age. I took early retirement when I was 57. I was glad to get the opportunity. I told everyone that life would be good. Life would be going out with ladies who lunch, deciding to go out for a snack here and there, doing it and not worrying about it. Life was going to be good. What I didn't know was that 6 weeks after I retired, and at the end of a cruise that we had taken up into the Norwegian fjords, I would be diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. Now, cirrhosis, for anybody who knows anything, you will immediately jump to the fact that it's alcohol related. And it's not always the case. In fact, not all cases of cirrhosis have anything to do with alcohol. Mine wasn't. Mine was as a result of what's called fatty liver. Now, of the roughly 20 people here today, probably about 15 of you have some form of fatty liver. It's part of your diet, it's a result of maybe a lack of exercise, it's perhaps hereditary, but we all have a certain amount of fattiness in our livers. The problem was that mine had reached a point where the liver was on a downward spiral and it was never going to recover. The liver is the only organ in your body that can regrow. So if you take part of your liver away, it will actually regrow. It will return to its normal size and weight and shape. When you reach this stage of cirrhosis, that doesn't happen. The liver will never recover. I didn't know I had a liver disease at all until I retired. When I was diagnosed, I had bloated up in weight. I didn't know what it was. My mother had died at the start of the year, and my emotions and everything was all over the place. And I thought it was just that. It was a bad time, I'd put on weight, I needed to do something about it. But it turned out it's what's called ascites. Ascites is a build-up of fluid in your body, which sometimes manifests itself around your waist, sometimes in your legs puff out, your ankles puff out, your face puffs out. And what it is the toxic fluid in your body that the liver, because it's not functioning, the liver can no longer get rid of. So this stays in your body. Whenever I had put on so much weight, it was a concern, but as I say, I didn't know what it was. When I was diagnosed in May of 2017, I was taken into hospital and they immediately drained off 10 litres of fluid. Now, my father struggled with this badly and he couldn't visualise what that was. So I said to him, next time you're in the supermarket, pick up a 2-litre bottle of Coke. Now pick up 4 more. Now carry those around for 24 hours a day. And at that point, he started to realise the extent of what was going wrong. That obviously reduced physically reduced size and weight, and I was put on medication, and I was told, this is how it's going to be. You may need to have more drains done because your liver is no longer functioning, and it may build up again, and you need to come in and get another drain done. Your liver will never recover, but we can keep you where you are on medication until it reaches a point, and the phrase has been used many, many times since, until it comes to a point where you fall off the cliff. In other words, that's the point at which your liver says, I've had enough. Nothing more is going to happen here. I got from May of 2017 until December. And at that point we were away, the family were away in a hotel for over Christmas. And I said to Elma, I can feel this weight building up again. After Christmas, I'll go back into the hospital and I'll get another drain done. And that'll be us in the next cycle. We got through Christmas, we got through New Year's Day, we came to the 2nd of January, we were back at home, and I started a hemorrhage at home. And it was 999, ambulance to the house, blue light, straight into hospital. And that was the start of me falling off the cliff. The liver at that point was shutting down totally. I spent most of January in a local hospital in Dundonald. I was then, towards the end of the month, they had already determined at that point that I was going to need a transplant. The consultant in the hospital spoke with Elma, Jane, our daughter, my father, myself, and any of you who have ever been with a consultant, for them to give you over an hour of their time sitting on the bedside and chatting to the family was quite something. Normally you get sort of 10 minutes of a consultant's time, they move on. But she explained very clearly that it was almost certain I was going to need a transplant and what that would entail. So mentally we were starting to prepare for that. There wasn't fear going ahead because she'd explained it so well. There was an understanding, and I'm very much a pragmatic person, I'm very realistic. I deal with what's here and now. I make plans, but I deal with them as I find them. So if you don't make plans, you have no life ahead. But you deal with things as you find them on the day, at the time, in that place, and that's how I approach life. So this prospect coming up didn't fill me with fear. I just needed to cope with it, I needed to manage it, I needed to understand all the aspects of it, and that was fine. So at the end of January, I was transferred to the biggest hospital in Belfast, which is called the Royal Victoria Hospital. And the Royal Victoria Hospital is the centre for all of Northern Ireland for liver care. And if you need a transplant, that's the conduit through which you are transplanted. Liver transplants don't take place in Belfast. They take place in London for adults in Northern Ireland. Children who need any liver care and a liver transplant, they're transplanted in Birmingham, in the Midlands in England. Kidneys are transplanted in Belfast, but not livers. So we had this prospect of going 400 miles from Northern Ireland down to London when it came time for transplant. About every 6 weeks, the big professor from King's College Hospital in London comes across to Belfast and holds a clinic there. And at that, he came across and he walked into the room on the Friday morning. I had been transferred from the other hospital on the Thursday night. Friday morning he walked into the room and all of the local consultants in the hospital were behind him. Waltzes into the room, and it was like a scene from a Carry On film if you've seen any of those. And James Robertson Justice coming in and all the other guys all behind in his wake, and he came. They all stood around the bed and he said, well James, I've read your notes and so far as I'm concerned you need a transplant, otherwise it's going to be potentially fatal. Okay. And I waited for the others and there wasn't one said anything. Nothing at all. And I thought, okay, that's good, because this is obviously the only solution. There's nobody coming up with anything else which might or might not work. This is the only solution. So he left it at that, out he went. And I'm going, okay, that's clear now. Now I've got to tell Ilma. Now I've got to tell my family this is actually going to happen. That was the last couple of days of January 2017. Because the operation takes place in London, in King's College Hospital, you've got to go for a pre-transplant assessment. And that was arranged for about the third week in February. And that entailed Elma, myself, and our daughter coming across to King's on a Sunday through until the Wednesday. And they've put you through a barrage of tests, psychological tests, physical tests, breathing, cardiac. They want to see you, they want to know that you are ill enough to require it, and of course the hospital in Belfast have told them that, but they want to see that you're ill enough to require it, but well enough to come through it, because that's the critical bit. If you can't come through it, if you're physically and mentally not prepared for that to happen, they may well not transplant, and that was not an option. So we did that, and at the end of the first day, I took ill again in King's, and I started to hemorrhage once again. And instead of coming home on the Wednesday, I was brought in through the emergency department, which was like a war zone, through the emergency department, and I lost quite a considerable amount of blood and had several blood transfusions there and then. At the end of it all, I came back, and the next day the phone call came into Belfast to the consultants there, and then ultimately to me at home to say, you've been accepted onto the transplant list. The way that works in the UK is it's a national list. You're placed on that list. You don't know where you are. It doesn't work like that. But every patient is assigned a score based on their health, based on their readings from blood tests, and that literally changes by the hour. So you never know where you are on a list. It's not as if you have a very high score, therefore you're number one. If there happens to be a car crash or a train crash, suddenly whoever is, to all intents and purposes, at number one could suddenly find themselves at number 20 because they've suddenly got a need to transplant other people. Life-saving. So it doesn't quite work as a simple 1 to 100 list. And just to put that in perspective, at this moment in time, in the UK, there are 641 people waiting for a liver transplant. So you have no idea where you are on that. But I was back home during, back in the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast for most of February. I was also there for most of March. Home occasionally for a few days, but mostly in the hospital. And there was one particular point about the second or third week in March where I never knew there was such a deep, dark, black place in my life. I was there, I didn't know how I was getting out. I was in a place I never ever want to see or know or hear about again. I had the full support of my family, I had the full support of all the medical staff, but I was way down there somewhere. Our daughter was in with us. She worked in Belfast at the time. She rented a house in Belfast, and in the evenings she would come up to the hospital. Elma would come up during the day, because we live about 20 miles outside Belfast. So she came in the evening after work and she sat with me at the bedside, and I looked at her at one point. She was holding my hand and I said, "Do you think I'm not going to come through this?" And she said, "Daddy, I'm worried." And I said, "Right. Have I ever lied to you?" And she said, "No." I said, have I ever promised you something and never fulfilled it?" She said, "No." I said, well then, I'm going to promise you I'm going to come through this. I don't know how, but I'm going to fight. I don't know where it's going to come from, but I've got to fight somehow. Got to fight somehow. Otherwise I'm out. And I made her that promise. And I had to fight. And I did. That was, let's say, the middle of March. The end of March, first few days of April, was Easter time in 2018. I got home from Good Friday. On the Wednesday, 2 days before, I'd had another 12 litres drained off, and was told this would now happen about every 3 weeks. That's how fast it was building up. I got home for Easter, and on Easter Monday morning, the three of us were in the house, and at 4:20 in the morning, the phone rang. And at that time, I don't know about you, but we instantly think somebody in the family has had a problem, they've had an accident. Something has happened dreadful to somebody in the family. Otherwise, why would anybody call at 4:20 in the morning? It turned out it was a phone call from King's in London. And the phone was on Elma's side of the bed, and they said, is James there? Yes. We need you over in London now. We've identified a potential liver that would be suitable. And bearing in mind we're in Northern Ireland, there's the Irish Sea in the middle, and London is down there. We've got to get there as quick as possible. And thankfully, the National Health Service kicks in at its very, very best. That phone call was followed 5 minutes later by what's called patient travel. And patient travel said, can you get to the airport for a 7 o'clock flight? The answer was always going to be yes. It was never going to be no. So I said yes. Right, you're booked on a flight that'll get you over to London. Just get there. They hadn't time. We have an air ambulance service, small aircraft. It was already tasked and wasn't available, so it was a commercial service. We left the house at 5:20. Check-in was at 6 o'clock. Normally it takes 35 minutes for us to get in the car from our house to the centre of Belfast. The airport is a similar distance on the opposite side of Belfast. We did the entire journey in 40 minutes. And had there been anybody who had stopped us along the way, I would have asked for blue lights to get us to the airport. But thankfully at 5:20 in the morning, on Easter Monday morning, there really was very little traffic about. We checked into the airport. They knew we were coming and why. We were on the flight. Flight left at 7 o'clock, landed in London at 8 o'clock. We were met by an ambulance, rapid response ambulance. The two of us got into the car, Elma in the back seat, me in the front, and he left the car park with blues and twos on. And we hit the motorway down into London. We did 95 miles an hour down into London. We came down through Park Lane at 70, normally it's 30. And it was quite something. And we were in the hospital at 9:10. So from phone call to getting to London to getting in the hospital was just 5 hours. We were told that it was a case of get prepped. So I was straight in the shower, gown, into bed, questions, paperwork. Elmo was on the phone at this time, phoning family and friends, guess where we are. We were told the operation may be round about lunchtime. It wasn't. We were then told it may be round about tea time. It wasn't. And what I'd started to work out was, while I had now arrived and was ready to go to theatre, the liver wasn't there. The liver was in some other part of the UK and had to be transported down to London. As it transpires, the liver was in Birmingham, which is 100 miles away. But it came 10 o'clock that evening. It was all go. We walked. Jane had flown over by the stage separately. The NHS had covered, the health service had covered the cost of Elma and I getting there. But Jane had arrived earlier in the evening. The three of us at 10 o'clock walked down the ward. The operating theatre for the liver operations is directly opposite the ward. We walked in there, said our hugs, kisses, goodbyes, all the bests, and the door shut. And the surgeon went through all the procedure again while I was there. Clearly it wasn't for an eye operation or to have my leg removed, it was for a liver transplant. Yes, fine. And through all the questions, and then I said, have you anything else to ask? And I said, no, but I've got 3 words. And she said, what's that? I said, bring it on. And she says, you're my kind of patient. She says, this is going to go well. And it did. Operation started at 10 o'clock on the Monday evening. Round about 10:30, 11 o'clock on Tuesday, I woke up in ICU. And lovely little nurse sitting beside me in the cubicle in intensive care. And she said, Jim, you're back with us. I said, I am. She says, how do you feel? I said, warm. She said, well, that's a good sign. Because one of the things with liver problems is that when your liver gets damaged, the body wants to protect it. And it draws blood from all over the place to protect the liver. So it draws it from your fingers and your toes, and I was constantly cold. I had ice cold hands, my fingers and my toes never warmed up for months and months beforehand. And I immediately felt warm. And she said, well, that's good, the circulation's good. Is there anything that you like? I said, I would love some water. Okay, so she got a little plastic cup of some water, and one of those sponge-like little lollipops that pops into the water and dams your lips with. Oh, that's lovely. She says, how do you feel? I said, or she said, do you feel sore? I said, no, I'm just uncomfortable. It's like I've had a really, really good night's sleep, but I've woken with a bit of a twist. All right. She said, you know, you've had 6.5 hours of surgery. I hope everything's okay. Would you like to sit up? I said, yes, that's fine. So she shuffled me up in the bed, and only when I tried to drink the water did I realise I was actually talking like a washing machine, because I still had tubes in, and she got those away, and I was able to drink the water, have a little bit of a chat, and I had multiple tubes and drains all over the place, in my neck, chest, in the sides. But I felt good. I felt really good. And the hospital kept Elma and Ian up to date as to how things were going. And after lunchtime, they arrived in. And I was well enough. We got some photographs, and out they went on Facebook. And I made sure that I put a post on showing that I'd come through it. We had people literally all over the world who were wanting to know it was going well. And I put the post on, said what I needed to say, and the photograph of the 3 of us in intensive care, and me sitting up with a smile on the face and a thumbs up. And that's how it's been. Touch wood. I've not been back in hospital for anything in the last 6 years. 6 years coming on the 2nd of April. I go for checkups. The liver took straight away. There were no complications afterwards. So much so that there are several drains that are left in for a little while afterwards, one on each side, just to drain excess fluid off and things like that. When it came time to fly home on the air ambulance back to Belfast, the skin had started to grow over those. I was healing very, very quickly, and they had to actually cut the skin again, and it started to grow over the tubes. And I flew back to Belfast post-op day 8, so the next Tuesday. Now, on average, a liver patient will be in recovery for about 2 weeks, on average. Sometimes it can be longer, sometimes it can be 3 or 4 weeks, depending if they've had a complication. I was extremely lucky and came home 8 days after the operation. That was back to the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast, where they just check you out, make sure the medication's all setting in, make sure that the flight has done no damage, and I was there for about 4 days and then back home. Literally from phone call to being back in the house was 2 weeks. And as I said, I've never been back in for anything else. I get checked up Now, at this stage, it's about every 5 or 6 months. Then it's once a week, then it becomes once a fortnight, then once a month, and so on as you progress. While all this was going on, I and the family were supported by what's called the Royal Victoria Hospital Liver Support Group, this lot here. And while it's centred in the hospital, we look after patients from all across Northern Ireland. Now, Northern Ireland's a small place. There's a population of about 1.9 million right across the province. And we look after liver patients as carers, as support. We don't do anything medical, but while I was lying in the Royal Victoria Hospital, the founder of the group, a lady called Kay Duffy, Kay arrived into my room one day and she said, "Okay, you're a new patient here?" "Yes." We had a chat. She explained what the group was. By the time she'd left, she had my email address and mobile number. She had Elma's mobile number and she had Jane's mobile number. The reason being that if I was in hospital and unable to do anything, she could support Elma and Jane. And I thought, that's terrific. This is not just about me as a patient. And I was quite taken with that. And when the operation was all over, I said to her, "Kay, if there's anything I can do to help the group, let me know, I'll see what I can do." So as I say, this was in April of 2018. We had got back caravanning again. We caravan at home. We got away for the first time. I wasn't allowed to drive for 3 months. It was killing me. But we managed to get away with the caravan in July. And I had to come down for a checkup. And on the way down, the phone went and it was an invitation to join the group as an adult patient carer. In other words, to help others go through exactly what I had just come through, explain to them what the pitfalls are, explain to them how it feels, explain to them what they might expect to feel and what they expect on the journey. And I started doing that in September of 2018. I love it. And it's very rewarding when you follow a patient through. Sometimes the patient doesn't actually speak to you. Sometimes it's the mother or the father or the wife or the daughter who you're actually providing the support to, because the patient's so scared. They need to hear it from a family member, so I support them. And sometimes this is half an hour, an hour and a half on the phone, privately, confidentially, talking to them. And the reassurance that that can give, that they are actually speaking to someone who's gone through what's ahead of them, is fantastic for them. So I relish what it is I do. And Kay and I, and now another gentleman who has not been transplanted, we share that responsibility between us. We have so many patients to look after. But being on the committee, I ended up, by default, having worked in a bank for 26 years, I ended up by default being its treasurer, which quite often happens in organisations. You find that no matter where you go. And subsequent to that, I'm also now as chairman, and have been for the last 4 years. And we have changed the way the group works, supporting patients, and we work extremely closely with the consultants in the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast, and also directly with the consultants and the surgeons in King's and London. As part of what we do, we go back to King's once a year. I was there back in August, and I've had the great fortune to meet not only the consultants who were looking after me there, but my surgeon. And she's a lovely young girl from Spain, who is one of the up-and-coming shining lights in King's, and they have great prospects for her. I hope that doesn't mean I was a guinea pig, but she certainly did a very good job. And I've met her and had a chat with her. The consultant who we met when we went over for the assessment, when, as I said, I took ill while I was there, I met him again just about a year and a half ago. And he took time out from his day. He walked into a little conference room where we were sitting with a bottle of Coke and a sandwich, and he sat down. He says, "Well, Jim, how are you doing?" I said, "Varuna," he's Egyptian, guy called Varuna Oluvahari. And I said, "Varuna, why are you giving up your lunch?" He says, "Well, I wanted to come and see how you are." So I said, I think my assessment at the time was one that didn't go particularly well. And he just looked at me and he said, "It was a memorable one, I'll give you that, because of the way things had turned out when I took it." But we maintained that relationship between our support group, ourselves, and the medical staff in the Royal and the medical staff in King's. And that's a very, very close bond, and they rely on us to do the pastoral care, if you want. We don't do anything medical. If a patient asks us any medical questions, we immediately refer them back to the hospital. But equally, the hospital staff know all the technical stuff, they know the procedures, but not one of them have ever been through the journey. And so therefore, they refer patients to us, and we talk them through what it is goes on. One of the things that you're told at the time of transplant is a little bit about your donor, but it is only a little bit. The truth is that within the National Health Service there is a central unit called the NHS Blood and Transplant, and they are a self-contained unit, and they deal with the donor side as well as the recipient side. They sit in the middle. So in the hospital, all they were able to say was, my donor was a 64-year-old male. And quite literally, that's all the Kings knew. NHS Blood and Transplant knew exactly all the details because they were involved with the donor side of it. And you're encouraged, when the time is right for you, you're encouraged to write to your donor family and offer thanks. And of course you want to do that. But I can tell you that's one of the most difficult letters you will ever write in your entire life, because you don't know personal details. You don't know enough words to say thanks. And you have no idea if they will want to receive that letter. Because one of the things that you're told is there are three possible options. One is that you'll write and they will receive it. The second is you'll write and they won't want to receive it. It's maybe too traumatic for them. They don't want to do it. They don't want to know anything about who received their loved one's organs. And the third one is that you'll write, and at that time they won't want to receive it, but they don't want to get rid of it either. So they ask NHS Blood and Transplant to hold it. And sometimes they hold that letter for years and years and years before the donor family want to actually see it. Because by that stage, the grief, the trauma of losing someone is gone. And I know of instances where it's actually the children of a donor have asked to see those letters because their parent, who was the one left, couldn't ever read them. So in my case, about 4 or 5 months later, I wrote, and you don't know who you're writing to. As I say, 64-year-old male. It could have been a father, a grandfather, could have had many brothers, sisters, could have been anything at all. And I wrote, and at the bottom of it, and again it's anonymous, you can give your first name, but not your surname, not where you live, nothing personal, nothing that identifies you as an individual. So a first name is fine. And I explained I was Jim, my wife was Elma, our daughter was Jane, and that, thanks to you, and I can't imagine the grief you're going through, but I hope you get some relief, some comfort from the fact that you know that having donated your loved one's liver, I'm here and I'm offering thanks. At the bottom of the letter I put in, perhaps if you're comfortable with the idea, you may choose to let me know a little bit about my donor. And that kind of opens the door a little bit. They then have a choice as to whether they want to do that. And thankfully, that happened. And a few months later, I got a letter back. And the wait for that is excruciating, because the hospital phones up and says, "We've received a letter from your donor's widow. Would you like to receive it?" I wanted to receive it 5 seconds later. And you can't, it doesn't work like that. You have to wait for it coming through the post. You've got to wait for it coming. And that wait is awful. And when it came, it was a lovely letter, and it was from a lady called Val, as in short for Valerie. Her husband was called Leslie. He was 64. He had been in the army. He had retired from the army and had worked in the prison service. He had retired and enjoyed golf. They had a local winery beside where they live, and he volunteered there. And they enjoyed travel, extensive travel. And we began a correspondence chain, which was fantastic. But because of the length of the process involved, it can take several months. You might only get 2 letters in a year by the time they go through the process. Both of us felt very, very irked by this. We wanted something better. And then COVID got in the way. And 2022, I volunteered to go across and participate in the British Transplant Games. Now, I know you're thinking athlete, right? Not the 100-metre sprint, not the 400 metres hurdles. I played long bowls, which I hadn't done for 25 years, and I played 10-pin bowling at the British Transplant Games. And I came home with a silver medal in the 10-pin bowling, which I was delighted with. But while I was there, this was over in Leeds in England, while I was there, I spoke to some people who said, "Why don't you ask NHS Blood and Transplant, the people in the middle, why not ask them to set up a video call between you and Val? Because if you both want to meet each other, if you both want to correspond directly to each other and not through this body in the middle, they should be able to accommodate that." So I did that. I wrote to them, explained the circumstances, that we were both in agreement that we wanted this to happen. Can they make it happen? And they said yes. So back in Belfast, or back home, I was in my study on a Zoom call. Val and her brother and sister-in-law, along with some nurses, were in the hospital in Birmingham where Leslie had passed away. And in Belfast was a transplant coordinator acting on my behalf. So it was mediated to make sure that things went okay. We were on for about 2 hours, roughly. And at the end of it, after the initial, "Oh God, is this right?" We saw each other for the first time. We got our tears out of the way. We got our questions, those vital, personal questions. She explained how Leslie had an accident and how he died. And then she wanted to know why I needed a liver. And we went through that. When that was over, by the end of the call, we were holding phones up and showing each other photographs of dogs and houses and holidays. And we hit it off like a house on fire. So the mediators from the hospital agreed that we could directly communicate from that point on, and we got each other's phone numbers, email addresses and so on. That was September 22. Our daughter got married in March last year, end of March, and we sent an invitation to Val if she would like to come. Now, she lives in Wolverhampton in the middle of England, and Jane, our daughter, wrote a personal letter to her and dropped it in the invitation. And when she got it, Val said that as soon as she read it, she had to come. And that was because Jane had put in it that if it hadn't been for Val's decision to allow Leslie's organs to be transplanted, I wouldn't be here. And if that was the case, she could never ever see herself actually getting married, because I wouldn't be there to walk her down the aisle. And when Val read that, she said, I'm coming. And she phoned up straight away. And she came to the wedding. We met her a few days beforehand in Belfast, and the immediate family were there. And she came to the wedding and loved it. And she met this mad Irish family that she now has in her life. And our liver support group celebrated its 25th anniversary last year. And we had a big event, big celebration dinner in a hotel in Belfast. We had nearly 300 people at it. And she decided to fly back over for that a month later. So she was with us twice in the early part of the year. When we were on our holidays with our caravan over in England, we called in with her in July and spent some time with her on her turf with her family and friends, and we met them. And then I went back for the transplant games again at the end of July last year, back this time in Coventry. And it was about an hour's drive from where she lives. So she and her brother and sister-in-law and Maisie the dog and some other friends arrived at the games to offer support. And on the Saturday night of the games, there's what's called the donor run. It's a donor run and a donor walk. You don't have to run it. I certainly didn't. It's a 5K, and it was in a great big park in the city. And they had several thousand who took part in this. And it's the opportunity for donor families to come along and participate in the transplant games. When we turned up, there were 6 people there, with Val and the rest, all wearing bright blue t-shirts with an enormous photograph of me on the front, taken at the wedding when we were sitting beside each other at the reception. And on the back, here to support Jim Kilpatrick, 2023. And we did the donor walk together, and we crossed the line arm in arm, all in Leslie's memory. And now she wants to know when the games this year are in Nottingham, again, not that far away. How many are coming to that and what she's going to do? I said, well, no more surprises like that. I can't face having t-shirts with my name printed on them and my face. But better than that, when we go home, we were speaking to her just before we came away on the phone, and she and her new partner are hoping to come across to Northern Ireland and spend a week with us at our house.
Good.
Take her around, show them around, spend some time, and that has been absolutely wonderful. It's a rare thing whenever a donor family and a recipient become that closely bonded together, and I'm very, very, very privileged. We have a similar sort of humour. We enjoy each other's company, and we thoroughly enjoy the time that we have together. It gives her comfort that I'm doing well, that the support group is doing well, as a result of my involvement in it, and she can see that her decision at the time, while it was extremely difficult to make, was the right one. So I've talked plenty. I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into what the support group does, what my journey was, and the importance of organ donation, and the fact that standing in front of you as someone who would not be here. The consultants told me if I hadn't had my transplant when I did, I'd have been dead in 3 months. So if it wasn't for organ donation, I wouldn't be here. And if you can possibly be a donor and you have a scheme to sign up to, please do it. You never know the benefit it will bring someone else in their life. Thank you very much.
So, my family told me that you received an award.
Sorry, I'm just going to rest my back here. Yes.
That you received an award in the January in the New Year Award.
Yes. Yes. For the work that I do and have done for the group and for the leadership of the support group, the King awarded me an MBE in the New Year's Honours list, which I was very, very taken aback with. I'd been over in Westminster in October for an event where there was a report launched into liver cancer, and I was in Parliament at that, and a month later the letter arrived in, marked on the outside from the Cabinet Office, and I thought it was a survey as to what I'd found when I'd gone over, about security, about passes, about access to the building and into Westminster. And it turned out it wasn't that at all. It was a letter informing me that the King had awarded me with an MBE for services to liver care and liver patients in Northern Ireland. So
Very good.
very pleased.
Thank you. Well, I think that we may need to conclude on this gathering this morning because we have another group coming from 1 o'clock. But I'd like to take an opportunity to say thank you so much, Jim, for sharing amazing story. But I do believe it was very tough and challenging. Yeah, but you having gotten through, and you are here, and hope you enjoy the holiday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and my friends here know that now I have very weak eyesight. When I look at your shirt, I thought, oh, you've got already the shirts from souvenir shop.
No, that's just the outline of Northern Ireland.
Right.
That's what that is.
Yeah. To me, it looked like an Australia.
Little, just scale it down a little bit.
That's right. Do you have any questions? Maybe we can have about 5 to 10 minute question time. Any question to?
Ladies
No?
in the office.
Do you still have to take immune suppression?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's every day. I'm extremely fortunate. I take one tablet.
Yeah, she's playing cards, the old one.
There are several different kinds. The type that I'm on is one in the morning, and that's it.
Right.
There are some that are in the morning and the afternoon, but I just take one in the morning for it, and that's for the rest of my life.
Where's the young one?
Small price to pay.
The daughter's just standing
Good.
out the front. I think she's keeping an
Any
eye.
other?
Don't feel you have to.
Well, actually, your story reminds me of one of the Bible passages I like. Paul's letter to the Galatians, chapter 2. He said, I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And he also said, the life I live in the body, I live by faith, the Son of God, who loved me and who gave himself for me. So you have, I believe you have the second life. Yeah. And we also have a second life through Jesus Christ. Whether you have recognized or not, we all have the second life because of God's grace and love and care. So we are enjoying, and I hope you enjoy your second life as well. Yeah.
I had very, very strong support from the minister in our church, who came along with her husband up to the hospital, sat with me very often. And in November last year, at the end of our 25th anniversary year, we held a service of Thanksgiving
That's good.
in Belfast, in the Methodist College, and they have a chapel of unity there. And she came and did the service for us. And we gave thanks for our donors and we gave thanks for life. And having had various celebrations during the year, it was right that we had a service of Thanksgiving at the end. And that was very, very well attended with beautiful music. And we asked anyone who was there who was a recipient, an organ recipient, to come forward and light a little candle for their donor at the front. And on the table at the front, we had a circle of little candles that were lit by all the recipients who were there. It was a lovely event.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, can I offer a prayer?
Of course, yes. Jim, would you like to sit down?
That's okay for me.
Are you sure?
Okay, Lord God, we thank you so much for Jim and his life, his second life. And we have heard an amazing story, even though it was very challenging, but we still find very thankful stories from there. And Jim, Donna, and family, friends, medical staff, support group, Lord, we thank you. Through all these people's prayer, love, care, Jim is here. And we also thank you, Lord Jesus Christ, who loved us and gave his life for us all, so that we can live with him and enjoy new hope, new life, together with Christ's fellows. So Lord, we praise you and thank you. And we also pray that Jim will have better health, and also use him to spread this good news with the people whom he met. And we thank you, Lord. We praise you, Lord, in Christ's name.